Hello and welcome to Jeffro's Game Room. As I'm sure you can tell from the thumbnail here, I'll be refurbishing an original Xbox. Before we get into the video though, this morning I woke up to 81 subscribers, and that might not seem like a big deal to most. It's a pretty big deal to me, so just want to thank all of those who have subscribed and getting really close to that 100 subscriber goal. So if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing if you like my content. So just demonstrating one of the issues here, which is the disk drive doesn't open unless you leave a disk in there, which is because the magnet that holds the little disk above the disk itself gets stuck to the magnet. I think this could be because it's a cheaper quality disk drive. It's an early model for the Xbox. This model that I'm refurbishing is a 2001 model, and the one that I'm using for parts is a 2004 model. So and you may be wondering, why don't you just use the 2004 model, you know, if it works fine, which it does. But the thing is, the 2001 model that I have is modded with Xbox Media Center, and the thing with the hard drive and the motherboard is they're kind of locked to each other, and unless you know how to jailbreak those kind of things, you have to keep the motherboard and the hard drive together, and I don't want to lose the options that a modded Xbox gives you. So we're keeping that motherboard and hard drive, and we're going to take the disk drive from the newer Xbox, and as well as the shell or case, whatever you want to call it, because it's just in better condition and it looks nicer. So we'll get started here. So first we get started by removing the rubber feet, because there are 4 screws that we need to get to underneath these rubber feet. And we'll put these on a piece of wax paper so the adhesive doesn't get dirty, and we'll be able to put them back on with no problems. So here I'm using a Torx T20. I'm using a security bit, but the security bit is not required. You can just use the regular Torx T20 and you're good. There's 2 hidden screws here. Of course they need a way to void your warranty if you decide to open it, but 19 years later I don't think we need to worry about any warranty, so we're just going to go ahead and take those screws out as well. Now we start gradually prying at the case. Fortunately, it's not like newer consoles where it's very difficult to get the plastic apart. Quite easy, as you can see here. Now that we have it open, we'll start with opening up the disk drive. This is so I'll be able to clean it while we're doing all this, because although it is newer, it's still old as well, so we want to make sure everything's clean inside. Now, there's only 2 screws preventing us from getting to the motherboard, and the bit we're using here is a T10 Torx. Now that we have those 2 screws removed, we can start removing some things, and this is where I realized I'm going to have to disconnect some wires in order to make the job a little easier. So I started with the power supply for the hard drive. Now that we have the power supply for the hard drive out of the way, we can get the what is basically a plastic frame that holds the hard drive and the disk drive in place. And once we have that lifted out, we can reach the power supply for the disk drive, and then the data ribbon for the disk drive and the hard drive as well. After getting a better look at things with a flashlight, I was finally able to get the ribbon removed. Alright, that's out. Now we can go ahead and remove the disk drive, which is the main part that we wanted from this Xbox. Turns out, after a little bit of research, the replacement disk drive I'll be using is of a much better quality. It's a Philips disk drive. This will get out of the way. We won't be needing that hard drive anymore. Now we need to repeat the same process, but with the modded Xbox. This should be a bit quicker because we've already done it once. Okay, we've got this disk drive and hard drive removed. We'll go ahead and put that aside and proceed with switching out the disk drives. Pretty easy to remove, as you can see here. Go ahead and do a little bit of cleaning. Make sure your things are nice and clean and prepped for reassembly. Before I put the new one in, I'll just show you the difference. That's the old one. This is the new one. As you can see, there's some design differences. And just as easy as the other one came out, this one goes in. Like I said earlier in the video, I opened up the disk drive so I'd be able to clean it. But it turns out that it wasn't really that dirty on the inside, so there wasn't much to do. That's all clean, so let's go ahead and put the cover back on. I left the screws in the holes so that I wouldn't lose them. So it's just a matter of putting it on there, lining the screws up with the holes, wiggling things around a little bit, make sure they line up, and we're good to go. Unlike the other screws, these ones are not Torx. These are just regular Phillips screws, kind of a tiny Phillips. But pretty easy to find a bit for it. As for the Torx bits themselves, they're quite easy to find at a hardware store. Okay, now on to the bulk of the work. We're going to move this motherboard into this case and take that motherboard and just put it aside because we don't need it. Moving on to emptying this case for the modded Xbox, which is going to include disconnecting the controller ports, the fan, and removing all the screws holding down the power supply and the motherboard. I'm going to go ahead and speed up this section so that we're not here all day. I hope you guys have been enjoying the video so far. Now that the motherboard and power supply are out of the case, we gotta of course give the case a nice cleaning. We want to make sure there's no dust and dirt. Give the fan some cleaning and all that stuff too, of course. Whoever previously owned this Xbox either didn't use it that much or they just took care of it. The last save file I was able to find on it was from like 2010, so it's been a while since it's been used. But we've got that all cleaned out. We'll put that aside, grab the other case so we can remove the motherboard and the power supply from this one. Once again, I've gone ahead and sped this portion up. Just don't want to bore you guys with the more tedious aspects of this repair. Alright, now that the motherboard and power supply from the modded Xbox are removed, they are ready to be put into the new shell. But first, we're going to give this a quick clean. Just get rid of any unnecessary dust or dirt. That's nice and clean, so we'll put that aside, grab our replacement shell, move these wires out of the way so we can get the motherboard and power supply into the case without any issues. Everything fits nicely, and then I realize, well, looks like I'm going to have to replace the controller ports as well, because these wires do not reach the circuit board that they need to. So we're going to have to go ahead and do that as well. Now that the old controller ports were removed, I went ahead and grabbed the other ones from the other shell. And as you can see, there's a pretty big difference in the cord length, and this is just because over time console manufacturers revise their consoles and make changes as that console generation goes on. Now that we're past that minor snag, we won't have any issues connecting the controller ports to the circuit board. Controllers are now connected to the motherboard, and last but not least, we got to connect the power and eject cord. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to open the disk drive, and we're not going to be able to turn the console on. So, definitely connect that. Well, technically, this is last but not least. We definitely have to connect this, otherwise, the system is going to overheat. Moving on to securing the motherboard and power supply down, and you may have noticed the slight differences between the two different models, and one of those differences was I wasn't able to put one of the screws in, but as you notice, there are lots of screws, and missing one isn't going to harm a thing. Okay, we're almost done. Just need to put the disk drive and hard drive back in, reconnect all the cables, put those last two screws, and then put the shell all back together. Just kind of wiggling things around, make sure it's all sitting in there properly, that way the case closes all the way, no gaps or anything like that. And then we're going to move on to reconnecting the ribbon cable. You want to be careful here. There's small pins we don't want to bend, so definitely take our time and we won't damage anything. And the last two wires to connect are the power supplies, one for the disk drive and the other one for the hard drive. That one's got a kind of a little channel that it feeds through, so we want to make sure it's in there. We don't want it to get pinched when we close the case. Make sure it's firmly connected and we're good to go. And we're basically done here. I wanted to put the top back on, make sure it closes all the way, and then open it back up and put the last 2 screws to secure everything in. And putting the top part of the case back on for good this time. And we're coming up to the end of the video, and I just wanted to say a few things. If you guys like the content, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. I'm getting really close to 100 subscribers, and with your help it's only going to be easier, so please consider doing that. To the 81 subscribers that have subscribed already, I appreciate it very much. And if you're one of the people that decide to watch this to the very end, you're a legend. I appreciate it very much. This video has been a lot of work putting it together, actually spanned over a few months. I've had plenty of time to test it out, and it works great. It works with all of my games, and I haven't had any issues with it since I've been using it, so hope you guys enjoyed the video. For the next video, I'm considering doing a game room tour. If you think that's a good idea, let me know in the comments. Yes, it's not just the name of the channel. I actually do have a game room. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and please keep tuning in.